Greetings, Scratchers! This video is intended for my Redlands Conservatory class, but absolutely everybody is welcome to follow along. This video is going to cover a really super simple, easy way to create gigantic Scratch worlds. So I know we all get tired of just scrolling left and right and just being stuck on the same screen and sort of teleporting from screen to screen. We want a gigantic world. So I've put it together in the simplest terms here, and then I'll show you a slightly more advanced example of it. But the basic idea here is we have our Scratch cat over here, and I will go ahead and expand his screen. And his world is made out of these quadrants. I'm going to click the green flag. So he starts off on quadrant 0, 0, and as he cruises to the right, he heads up in quadrant 0, 1. The cool thing here is he can also head upwards to quadrant 1, 1, quadrant 1, 0, and I only have 4 quadrants to start with because I want to keep this super simple, but you can easily add as many as you like with one little quick cut and paste. Now, anything that you put in these quadrants, you can have things for your character to run into. You can have other characters for him to fight. Anything can be put into each of these quadrants, so you can create a massive, gigantic battlefield if you would like. Hey, speaking of battlefield, let me show you one other quick example where I just put a little bit of terrain in the background. So let me pop that out of there. So here's a tank. And as you can see, it's cruising around. I added some terrain. You can see I numbered the quadrants. Normally, those numbers, of course, won't show up in your program. I just did that so you'd know exactly where we were and you could see how things were put together. There is a little artifacting, a flicker, which is a limitation of Scratch when you go from quadrant to quadrant. And it depends on how simple your background is. Simpler backgrounds don't obviously flicker as much as complex backgrounds. And maybe as Scratch is improved and computers get faster, even that'll go away. But I just made a really simple tank. The cool thing about this is you can have that vignette appear around it. We can make it look like a flashlight. You could make a human character or a car or whatever you'd like, and you could make a terrific pop scare game with this. And I think that's going to be one of the most fun things that we do with it. So let's jump back to the secret of making gigantic Scratch worlds on any level you would like. And normally in a video, I'll pull out each instruction one at a time. This one's so simple that I want to save time for you, and I'll let you just pause the video if you want to take the code that's here and copy it into your computer. Now, each of these different quadrants is super simple. The code is the same for each one. We covered scrollx in a previous video, so if you haven't covered scrollx before, you might want to zip back and see the previous video on scrollx. This adds scrollY. So the entire sprite, each of these quadrants is one sprite, can scroll up and down, and they are connected with the old scrollx trick. So this is square 0, 0, and as you can see, we simply have this equation, and then we have 0, 0. So when we go to scroll over to 0, 1, it's exactly the same code, except now we have our y is set to 0 and our x is set to 1. So y is your up and down coordinate, and x is your horizontal, your back and forth coordinate. So you can see how it's laying these screens down for you. When we say y is 0, it means it's going to be starting at the bottom because that's the lowest y. And the one above that will be 1, and the one above that will be 2. So each time we increase y, it plots that quadrant up one more level. And each time we increase our x, where it says set x2 by this number, by 1, it's going to plot it one more over. So you can lay that quadrant down anywhere that you would like just by changing these two numbers. So to super easily visualize that, I put together a graphic for you. Hey, I'm really going out on a limb here. So on our little 4-quadrant world, here's the code which accompanies each quadrant and where it would plot the quadrant for your character to go. So here's 0, 0. That's going to be our starting point. And as you can see, set x to 480 times 0, set y to 360 times 0, because our screen is 360 high and 480 across by default. That's why each quadrant will be that same size. So to make our next quadrant over here, we would simply change x by 1. We'd increase it by 1 to plot it 1 over, and we'd leave y at 0 because we want it to be, since y is your up and down coordinate, at the same level up and down from this one. If we wanted to plot a square on top of this one, we would then change it to 1, 1. So we're now over 1, and we're up 1, which is where it puts it. And if we wanted to be here, we'd put 0, 1, because we'd be 0, starting position as far as our x, and 1 as far as our y position on top of it. So if you wanted to add another quadrant here to the right, all you would do is you would simply change your x setting to 2. And you would leave your y at 0, and it would plot it at 2, 0. So 2 quadrants over, starting at 0, and the lowest position. And to add a quadrant here to the top, as you probably already guessed, it would simply be 1 for your Y setting, telling it that it's in this first position, and your X setting would go to 2, which would put it here. So as you can see, as you increase these each time, so now let's zip back. We're almost done, actually, and then you're going to be coding in a flash. So let's zip back to Scratch. Well, there's our tank, and here is our main Scratch. So let's say, I'm going to delete this just for the moment because I got ahead of myself there on this one. So let's go ahead and we'll hit the delete key on this. Delete, because I already created a quick one. So here are the 4 quadrants, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1. So let's say we want to add another one to the right of the cat here. Let's go ahead and we just say duplicate. You right click, click on duplicate, and there we go. So here's our quadrant. The code is already in there. By clicking on it, we can see the code is already in there. And we know we need to set X is currently 1 since it made a duplicate. So we'll set that to 2. And that should be all we need to do, and we should have another quadrant when we go back. Let's go ahead and change the color on it so that we can see that we have a new quadrant. And I can get rid of those numbers too if we like. And let's just go ahead and make it some wild color. We'll make it a darker blue. We'll say OK. So now when we run our cat, he will cruise from the red to the white here, and then over to, there's our new square. And you know what? I plotted it up above. So there's our new blue square, which is very similar to our old blue square. So why did I plot it up above? A quick look will tell me what I did wrong. Okay, right, because our Y is 1. So it plotted it up above. If we were to have changed that to 0, it would have been on the first line. Hey, good lesson for the teacher. And it makes it really obvious to everyone else as well. So by changing that back to 0, there we go. Now we've got our cat. He's got his places that he can run. As I said, you should be able to make a terrific jump scare game. You should be able to make a very large Scratch world. You can limit and not allow your character to scroll off and on the board, or you could have these little worlds pop up in an even larger world, and you could just have quadrants appear with things to do as you go. Perfect maze game. Any size is possible, and you're definitely going to want to do a cooler character animation than I did, but I think that covers the basics. So once again, if you want to pause the video, here's the code for the main character that I used. You can be a lot fancier and have him turn and move and animate, but I wanted to leave that out so it wouldn't be confusing. And then each of these is simply the same code over and over again, just changing these 2 numbers to decide where you want to put your quadrant. And when you zoom into costumes and edit, you can draw lines in here. You can add obstacles for your character to go around. You can create other characters within this region as well. You can have people wandering around, and that should allow you to make a game of any size at all in Scratch. I'll see you in class.